up the audio.
Is that what it does?
Yeah.
Wow.
It means, because I've got the separate device for the audio,
Okay.
I have to splice them all together later on.
God, you're clever. I see. That's just beyond my abilities entirely.
Oh, I didn't know about it. Luckily, my first guest was Deck, a filmmaker,
Oh.
and he was like, "Clap for us," because that's what the clicker thing's for, apparently.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I never knew that.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Gosh, I didn't realise. I just thought it was to make everybody go, okay, shut up.
yeah, we're going.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought, just organisation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, welcome to Talking Dark Live.
Thank you, Wally. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So I guess to get into your work, we've got to start with the theatre in the basement, because
Oh, yes.
that was the first story you told us, and it's a philosophical inroad into your work that might be unexpected to some.
Well, it had such a profound effect on my life and the way I see life. To grow up above a theatre, you remember the years in accordance with what plays were on. You know, you think, oh, it was Anastasia, so it must be this year, or it was The Big Country, so it must be some this year. You know, you just remember it like that, and you had this magical playground under the floorboards that was constantly changing. You know, it could be a Western set for a couple of months, and then it would be a fairyland in one of Shakespeare's Midsummer Night's Dream or something. And we'd go in there and tell these ghost stories and scare ourselves silly. It was just, but absolutely loved it. So that when you had to go in there alone, like I had to practice piano in there alone, and I just used to watch the curtains and imagine all the ghosts that were in there and all the stories we told. So we ended up, you know, just basically doing ourselves in. But it was a magical place. My dad. It's now fairly common for people in Queensland to raise their houses and build in underneath. Once upon a time, it used to be the zone that the air would flow through and keep the house cool.
Right.
But now they've got air conditioners, they can build them in.
Oh, yeah.
But my dad did this in 1968 and dug down into the ground and built this theatre under the house, and it operated for more than 40 years.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and it was magic in the neighbourhood.
How many did the theatre seat?
It's seated 100.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, it was a studio theatre, but it seated 100, and it had beautiful, it had control room and lovely lights, and it had a kitchen to make, you know, food in. It was a really great spot, and I'm very, very fortunate to have grown up in such an environment.
I mean, it's no surprise you turned out an artist, being around such imaginative surrounds so early on, and music and acting and all of that. And I think in that, we sort of have to talk a bit about illusion in getting into your work. And in line with the stage sets you grew up with, I'm kind of interested to hear in your words how these notions affect your practice.
Very much. I think that illusion is such a powerful way to get to the hearts and souls of people, which is what art is about. Art is all illusion. And I used to see on the stage, you know, the sets were always reused. We were on a bit of a budget, so they were repainted, they were stuck together with masking tape. The flats would be repainted. We'd use the same props or find different ones sometimes, but the worlds that were created were quite different, and the worlds that existed there were quite different. And I realised that you know, the human mind, reality is a relative thing, really. And my art is about a very real thing, which is the deep time evolution of the planet. But it's just an illusion of it. It's, you know, and as much as I can research the science of what happened, it's still just plaster and tea and eggshells and illusion that hopefully touches people's hearts, makes them feel the story.
I mean, that's the power of art too, is that it can visualize things that are inaccessible. You know, you can't access those expanses of time.
No, you can't. You can't imagine them. You know, I remember telling...
even just getting your mind around
Getting your mind is like, you can't do it. You can't think in billions of years. You can't imagine how something can change from a few minerals, from an explosion of gases to the formation of minerals to a few minerals to a conglomeration of minerals that react with budding life on the planet and create further minerals, which creates further life. You just can't imagine the amount of time that takes. You know, I remember telling the story in one of the seminars that John McPhee, who actually invented the term deep time, he said, if you were to look at the old English yard, which is like from your nose tip to the end of your arm, if you were to take a nail file and file off the very faintest piece of dust from your fingernails at the end, that is the number, that is how long, that equates to how long human beings have existed compared to the rest of the universe. Yeah.
Oh, fuck that.
Yeah.
Actually, a head hurt.
I know it does, doesn't it? I think of it every time I file my nails now. I'm thinking, oh, there goes all those human beings. There I go.
Well, that's a great point, because we also have to kind of address, like you mentioned, the eggshells and the tea. There is this marriage between the microcosmic and the macrocosmic. But I'm curious to know if that engagement with coffee grounds and eggshells and things in your daily life, did that come out of COVID during the master's degree, or is that something you've been thinking about longer?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Ollie. I have been thinking about it longer than COVID, but because we were locked down so early in our MFA1 era, and all I had to work in was the little tiny kitchen in our studio apartment. I had a kitchen bench there, so I started to play with all sorts of different food dyes and products like bleach and things like that, which don't appeal to me. Synthetic things don't appeal to me. And I was reading Professor David Wood's book called Deep Time, Dark Times one morning whilst eating breakfast, and he has this wonderful section in it where he talks about the trillions and trillions and trillions of times denser than rock the initial Big Bang was, etc. And he goes into these phenomenal, unbelievably vast quantities of time and space that create the universe. And then he says, and here I am sitting here having my morning coffee in the middle of it all, you know, just, and I thought, here I am having eggs and a cup of tea. So I thought, what a great, silly, petty way to approach the numinous. Like out there, outside my window, was Sydney Harbour, and there was, you know, the blue of the sky, and it went on and on forever, you know, to the ends of the universe, or, you know, if there is an end to the universe. And I thought, that's what I will use to limit the limitless in my work, to create boundaries for something that's boundless. I'm going to make my work about the materiality, which is always using the tea and eggshell, the raw black gesso, plaster, which is created. Was created like 600 to 250 million years ago on Earth. You know, when the oceans receded for a while, this gypsum came up, which is mainly calcium, and they cook it and they crush it, and it's this product that is millions and millions of years old, and you add water to it, and it heats. The heat that comes from it is quite scalding.
It's amazing. I put my hand to your fresh ones, and they literally like exude heat.
They do, they do. And you know, they're weighty, and then they dry, and they are beautifully malleable in that, you know, I scratch into them and use different materials in them, and I allow them to create themselves as much as I create them. You know, they pick up beautifully on stains and marks on the ground. So that's how I use a bit of chance in the work as well. Yeah.
Let's take a quick break.
Raging around the library.
You would have been great. You would have been great.
I'd be a grumpy librarian.
No,
I won't give you responsibility like that.
No, it would be extremely good. The library usage would skyrocket.
Mm.
Did we get to track again?
Thank you for reminding me. Give us a clap. Nice. I like to cue up the transitions. So when we clap, it doesn't just sync the audio, that turns on. So it's like we have magical powers.
Okay. I like that.
It actually cracked me up the first time I did it. Saw the clap activated green screen.
So great, the power of it.
Cool, so we're talking about deep time, consideration of all living things and timelines, preceded by hundreds of thousands of years of geological formation, microbial intermingling. The question I had here, which you've already touched on, and I really like that quote about that kind of butting heads between considering deep space and then I'm just sitting here having my coffee
Yes.
and everyone else is ignoring it.
Yes,
You know?
yes.
Look, what do you think it means to be thinking about that in today's world?
I think it's absolutely essential that we consider ourselves as interconnected with everything we don't think about out there. You know, we're a small part of a very vast thing, and it doesn't enter our daily lives very often. You know, we're so busy with trivia and the small things of life and the big things of life, of course, that we don't consider ourselves as part of the rock, the trees and the microbes and the creatures that are so similar to us and part of who we are, you know, where we came from. I think we stop a lot of selfishness and greed to consider that you're part of a very large family and formation, rather than, oh, I've got this time and I've got to do everything I want to do in this time, this small number. It's
I feel like humanity would be fun if we could zoom out a little bit.
exactly. Yeah, you know, humanism. We studied humanism in art theory, and always thought, oh, humanism, that's a really nifty concept. You know, it created a lot of great art and a lot of great philosophy, but it also made humans believe themselves to be at the peak of the pyramid. You know, this evolutionary thing, and here we are, and it's not going to go any further because we're so great. And that's nonsense. You know, we're not a pyramid. We're like this. We're a pyramid. Yeah, we're not a pyramid. We're not sitting.
We're not even a Greek sculpture.
No.
We're just fucking flesh and bone.
Yeah.
Rot and die.
We do, and then all that rotting and dying becomes something else. You know, we truly are, to use Carl Sagan's term, we really are star stuff. We've got products within our body. Our body is made from the first explosion of stars. And we are, as Robert Hazen has so beautifully put it, we're stardust and bugs, because most of our body is our microbiome. It's our microbes. The gut, the head, the whole body, it's these little critters that live out their lives and help us live. And we don't give them a second thought until we get sick. But that's what we are. We're star stuff and bugs. And I like to think of that when I'm letting life get me down too much. I think, you know, it's okay, you're just star stuff and bugs, settle down.
I mean, I like that too, even just what you said before about comparing yourself to a tree or a rock. any other piece of nature, because I feel like that's not a standard mode of thinking. It's very common, you know, like I feel like most people would be like, they think back and think, oh, well, we start with monkeys.
Yes.
We ended up with us.
Yes, yes. And have we evolved or have we de-evolved? Are we de-evolving now? You know,
and then you say to someone, oh, we started with fish. And you're like, what the fuck?
what are you saying?
It's like, no, I thought you learned evolution too.
Yeah, no, it's still contentious, which is outrageous in this day and age. But the whole theory of evolution, no matter how many scientific truths there are to it, people still want to believe that really, you know, God just made us like we were just his ultimate. He was there to make us. And I came on these, I did a lot of reading into post-humanism for this project, the MFA project. Fantastic writers like Rosie Braidotti and Donna Haraway, who have this notion that we are all kin, we are kindred, and vital materialism, where people like Jane Bennett, her beautiful book, sees everything, you know, this table and your hat and my rings as entities within their own self, you know, and we are part of them and they're part of who we are. We all are made of the same thing, and we've got to stop thinking of ourselves as rulers of the planet. You know, we've got to find better ways to educate, better things to want in our lives, less greed and less consumerism, you know, this capitalist neoliberalism that's, you know, absolutely squeezing the globe, you know, digging down and excavating all the minerals and using the water and abominating the earth, really. It's got to be thought. And I think that art is apart from it, but it can say something in one vision. That you could read a book, spend 6 days reading a book like that. You could get the same feeling out of looking at one piece of art if it's created with passion and truth.
Yeah, and I think that's been a common thread throughout much of our drawing cohort has been trying to find a way that we can work that marries what we're doing in our art life to how we feel about the world more broadly. It's funny talking to her today actually, because she was like, doesn't it blow your mind that there's environmental artists out there using concrete? it's like, yeah, the delusion does go that far.
Yes, exactly. It's like, what? Come on, you've got to live what you're preaching. You do, as much as you possibly can. You've got to live what you're saying. Your art, you know, the way you recycle plants and books and words, and make your own paper, and the way your beautiful etchings that use the oxygen in the air to oxidize into the verdigris is so beautiful. It's so glorious. This is you working with nature and being true to your materials. And it's very, we've been so lucky. Our cohort, the whole MFA cohort, particularly our drawing cohort, we've been so close and bouncing off each other and learning from each other. It's been spectacular, hasn't it? These 2 years that have been so hard have been wonderful.
Oh, it's been amazing. I think we've all found that against all odds, at a time when most people here were getting cut off from their facilities and connections, we kind of became closer because of those Zoom sessions.
Yeah.
I think you were one of the first stories you were one of the first presenters that opened that up.
I don't know. I remember it being you. I remember
being amongst the first.
I remember you showed your past work, that lovely time when we got to do something about our past and our past work.
That's right.
Mary Ann got us together.
You guys found out all about it.
We found out all about it. It was so open and honest and just natural and trusting. that it changed. I think that was where the chemistry started to change now. Everybody thought, oh, we're being honest now. We're showing ourselves warts and all as well as what we're making out from our art. And it almost, and I recall he was maybe the start of that.
Yeah, right. Well, it certainly led to me it's like that experience directly led to seeking interviewing, because it was like, wow, there's these great stories, and there needs to be some way to uncover them.
Yeah, it's wonderful what you're doing.
Oh, don't tell me.
Don't tell me!
Fuck, it's not recording.
Oh no!
It's alright, we can use the cameras later. It's just good. Let's switch it over now.
So,
And a clap?
oh yeah, clap. Thanks for reminding me. So yesterday with Melinda, we kind of half joked about the idea of hiding behind process.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that as printmakers, and in your case as a sculptor, we can work with these beautiful materials that elevate our ideas for us, and have to scrutinise our drawn marks far less than, say, Luke or Bella.
Mm-hmm.
But Melinda had the great point in that, whilst observational drawing is all-encompassing, and, we all practice it in our own leisure to kind of maintain skills, in working materially, we're given more time to think and maybe sit with things and consider next steps. So I'm curious to know how you intuitively work through your plaster pieces, because you don't make 250,000 of the buggers without developing a sound methodology.
Absolutely.
But I get the sense that there would be heavy prep work cut by short bursts of kind of instinctually working through it.
Yeah.
How would you say?
Well, I remember early in the piece when we were speaking with Marianne, quite early, she said, "Oh, your work is going to be in the process, in what processes you use." And I thought, no, I'm just going to make a whole lot of really interesting textures, and the way I was working in sculpture, and just have sculptural objects with very interesting textures. And I thought about what she said and my ideas of what I wanted to do, and I realised that she was absolutely right, as she always is. That it is in the process, because the process has to somehow replicate the story that I'm telling. So when I pour my plasters, I pour them onto the marks and the shapes and the materials that were left over from a prior work. So in a form, each one is an evolution of the one before. And I pour them with a certain, as I was saying, certain amount of chance involved. I would love to be able to make works like Luke and Bella, which are so incredibly observational and anatomically correct. But that's not my style art, and I can't say anything with that sort of art. My art is more conceptual rather than observational. But I use the observation in looking at what happens on a chance level and reworking it. So I'm working hand in hand with chance as well as with. It's more of a determined chance. You know what's going to happen, because, as you say, when you make a whole lot of them, you know what you're going to end up with after a while. So you determine the chance. You can make it work for you as much as you're working for it. Is that what you meant? Sorry?
Yeah, exactly. The thing with chance. And have you ever considered, is the idea of the chance kind of being somewhat analogous to these random mutations in nature?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, it is. Nature is created. Since Charles Darwin's time, random mutations have been understood to be what creates evolution. So, and in the very minutest forms of physics, quantum physics, it has been found that particles operate purely randomly, purely according to chance. You know, they don't have any mechanics that can be predicted. So, you know, was it John Cage said, chance brings art closer to nature in its way of operation. And that's what I thought. I was a bit of a control fiend before masters, and so I just decided I would grow from the masters as well and just leave that control that I always exerted behind to some extent. I'll never do it completely though, Ollie.
Oh, it's hard to do. Well, that's all the questions I had.
Okay, they're good questions.
What were we talking about before that I didn't get the audio for? Maybe we should circle back and talk about it again.
We were talking about how the Zoom sessions opened up our cohort to being the close thing that it.
Oh yeah. You know what I might do? I might just restructure it.
Yeah.
So the dodgy audio can be the last.
The last bit.
section.
Okay. So people have really got to want to hear it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did that.
No, that's.
I mean, the video will look the same. It'll
Yeah.
just be one bit with. You just get more of the aircon. Is the only difference.
Okay.
There's a bit of a humming.
Bit of a hum. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was really fun.
Yeah. You
Yeah,
get it?
God, I could talk to you forever, Ollie, and at times we've spent half the day chatting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, next time we'll have a longer time slot and we can just chat away.
Yeah. Okay, that'd be beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks, TC.
Thank you very much,
Been
Ollie.
great. Thanks, Kev, for joining in.
Thank you. And thank you, Luna. Lovely of you to stay. Yeah, you are very good.